So next up, the Ministry of Free Speech. So we'll be talking about the EU and, wait, isn't it funny how every time Europe wants to take society forward, it's Germany? Just saying. Third time's a charm. We have YouTube awarding itself an award for free speech, social media silencing people, Amazon burning books, speakers stopped from lecturing, cancellations, mainstream media attacks on controversial opinions and demonetizations, Twitter arrests in the UK and other places with hate speech laws, university expulsions in wrongthink, both students and teachers. And then also you've got Islamic blasphemy attacks and subsequent fear from all of that. So let's look at the EU war on free speech first. So once upon a time, the EU had no right to tell any sovereign country what to do or how to run their own affairs. Similar to America, but unsimilarly, is that a word? Unsimilarly? No one had the forethought to jot it down, making a constitution. So the EU had the power through control. That was until... Dun, dun, dun. The EU introduced the Council Framework Decision Form 2008, encouraging all member states within the EU to clamp down on free speech within their own borders under the guise of compassion, and not causing offence or hurting any of those feelings, and just a general air of political correctness to be instated for the good of all, The road to hell is indeed paved with good intentions, and as Thomas Sowell said, it's a superhighway. With the title being Combating Forms of Racism and Xenophobia. Sound familiar? Sound familiar? And this was exemplified when the EU started a procedure against Finland for failing to implement the EU free speech legislation, basically banning hate speech and Holocaust denial, bullying the government and attacking elected officials into conforming with their new standards of being. I never understood why people get so mad when people deny the Holocaust. I mean, if someone is that crazy that they don't believe that for all those years those atrocities happened, with the footage and the multiple nations independently reporting the horrific camps, the recovered documents, the in-person Nazi testimony and confessions in all of their diaries, the millions of Jews who each have a story to tell themselves or others that are sadly not here with tattoos in their bloody arms and scars to go along with it. I mean, if after all that they still don't believe that it really happened, then don't worry about it. Come. Next, are you going to put those who think that flat Earth is a real thing in jail? Though I did hear a very interesting argument about flat Earth that I think you should. The EU issued a statement recently saying the EU is ramping up its pressure on remaining members. It now thinks member states cannot be trusted to write its own laws on hate speech, with Article 83 of the Treaty of a Functioning EU saying it can establish criminal law and require countries to adopt them. I mean, how frightening is that? So in one of YouTube's more ironic moments, it awarded itself via Susan Wojcicki a free speech award. And it was immediately roasted from all sides in utter hilarity. Where at the time of recording this video, the clip on YouTube has 87 likes and 20,000 dislikes, so you can double that now. And that is a ratio that stings. I mean, oof. And this is all regardless of them banning channels, content makers, spicy comedians, political wrongthink, people who cause offense, hate speech mongers as they define or don't, conservative viewpoints allowing all types of hate and threats of violence from the left while policing milquetoast conservatives. In effect, promoting mainstream media's talking points, demoting independent journalists and video suppression of ideas they don't like, reducing who it reaches. Like and subscribe. And just ask Stephen Crowder, or Milo, or Alex Jones, or Gavin McInnes, or the millions of smaller content makers, if she deserves that award. How about James O'Keefe from Project Veritas? Just for telling the actual truth and showing it on video. But it must be said, as a device that allows people to share content, however policed, I know from around the world, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it is a bloody miracle. It's just the wrong people are steering the ship. We've got ideologues, not libertarians, unfortunately, and imagine what that would be like. I mean, the hills are alive with the sound of keyboards. And Susan, in fact, admitted, we removed 9 million videos last quarter, which is only 3 months. 90% moved by machines. If there is content that is violative, we find it really quickly. Also appearing at the World Economic Forum for Global Tech Governance in 2021 to discuss how YouTube has ramped up its censorship and calls for global coalitions to address content that's legal but could be harmful. I guess I'll be seeing you around sometime, huh? Because this ain't going to last long, huh? This is obviously someone deserving of a free speech award. So this is all happening alongside Amazon's digital burning of books, not allowing certain books on their platform, with a new policy banning books that are deemed offensive or hate speech or conspiracy theories or Holocaust denial, while also banning Parler from its services and deplatforming certain conservative websites, etc., etc., etc. And senators claim that Amazon is signaling to conservative Americans that they are not welcome on their platform. And frankly, it kind of seems like it, doesn't it? Especially when Amazon controls 83% of the market for books. They are effectively deleting ideas from society. Where even if people have a version of a book that is now banned on the Kindle that they purchased a while ago, it will be deleted and taken off your system, like When Harry Met Sally by Ryan T. Anderson. This is also happening against a backdrop where multiple speakers are having their lectures cancelled due to threats of violence from a mob. From conservative Jewish political commentator Ben Shapiro, that they call a Nazi, all the way to Daryl Davis, that they call a Nazi, who is a black speaker who converted over 200 people away from the KKK in the United States. An incredible man. There is no consistency. We just hear the yelling of safe spaces, of offense, of shutting down any and all critical thought and discussions of ideas which help society grow, showing their ideology to be illogical or hypocritical or both and just cult-like. They say free speech when we have cancellations on social media, with even Donald Trump being kicked off Twitter. Mainstream media attacks on perceived threats, demonizing and mob cancellations. With the UK and the EU Twitter social media arrests. Officers being sent to the house of people for saying naughty words on social media. And most of the time, them true. University expulsions, both teacher and pupil. The constant Islamic attacks due to blasphemy laws of cartoons. God forbid, a joke. Someone make a bloody joke. Oh. Google and other big tech online companies censoring and bottlenecking people's content in favor of certain views, just pushing an agenda. China, Russia, and the Middle East, all doing their best to curtail free speech, and most countries around the world, to be honest. When you think of free speech, what do you think of? Yeah, not there, or there. Yeah, the other one. The social fear of causing offense, and what it's like to lose your life, your business, your reputation, and never be seen again. With comedians, writers, films, and TV all being banned or taken off streaming services. Now we have old movies, old books, old songs that don't live up to the 2021 standards of being vanish from our culture and our history, losing all the lessons that go along with it and that we may need in the future. I mean, whatever happened to, I disapprove of what you say, but I'll fight to the death for your right to say it. Voltaire, huh? So congratulations, Susan, what about a ding dong, on your free speech award, and just ignore Christopher Hitchens spinning in his whiskey-filled grave. So if you don't eat jerk chicken, you ain't black. So the BBC diversity chief in the UK has said one of the world's most beloved actors, Idris Elba, is just not black enough, surprising anyone who has bloody eyes. But luckily, she went on to clarify her statements, because you see, this guy, yeah, him, and now look at me, yeah, to the casual observer, he would definitely appear black, but you were wrong. So Miranda Wayland said he should be out there just eating Caribbean food, and hanging with a black friend. He should have more of them around him, as he doesn't just seem authentically black. Though there are a myriad of problems with this statement. One is that they're not realizing that Idris's family lineage originates from Africa and not the Caribbean. So jerk chicken definitely shouldn't be on the menu, boys. I mean, if she's going by ancestral stereotypes. I mean, imagine, if you will, a place as timeless as time, where a white person might utter the words, "He's not black enough because he doesn't eat curry goat and hang out with his only black friends." Imagine what would happen. And isn't it interesting, as so often happens when the diversity chief or the human resources team turns out to be the actual racists, huh? With this inter-black racism and unspoken secret in the community. I mean, we even have Joe Biden, the demented president of the United States, saying, if you don't know who to vote for, then you ain't black. A stunning statement to come out of anyone's mouth. And it always seems like these far left and these cultural extremists and these woke racists seem to be the ones who define what is and what isn't blackness or whiteness or anything of that nature. And so often it's a muddy mess because of it. I mean, how strange that race or blackness in this instance is always to be at the forefront of the character in every way that's stereotypical. The worst way to perceive a person. I mean, rather than him just being a man. A cop, a Brit if you must, who goes about his business and just happens to be black. No Jamaican dreadlock hat needed, I promise you. That's the reason why everyone watched the show in the first place, was because we liked him. The person, the man, the character, and we related to him. Not his blackness, because it didn't matter. And it's always the stereotype of blackness, rather than seeing it as a spectrum with all its many facets. In wealth, upbringing, ideas, morality, place of birth, personal experience, their own drives and dreams, and what they want to become of self, or want to be in the future. Like every other race or person or sex out there in the world. This is just the bigotry of low expectations. To conform with their ideology of identity politics and critical race theory and the ever-growing victim narrative. The trouble's in Ireland right now. Round 12,472,000. Ding. Okay, people, strap in, because this one's a doozy, and I'm going to try and give a little bit of a brief history to all the problems that have led up to the issue we see developing between the Northern Irish and the UK and Ireland right now. All right, it's not going to be perfect, and I may mess up a couple of things or details or forget some guy named Paddy O'Paddy who was significant somewhere, but this is just to try and add a little bit of context to everything we're seeing right now. I'd also like to give a shout out to Future History's channel for doing an excellent job on the videos on this. I mean, check him out if you want any more detail than what I'm about to say. He's great. All right, because there's a lot. All right, so disclaimer done. You ready? So the Troubles was a 30-year period of sectarian violence, and the source goes all the way back to 1169, all right? So strap in, guys. And the Norman conquest of Ireland, where British and Irish leaders were in conflict, especially peaking at the Protestant Reformation, where most of the English became Protestant and most of the Irish stayed Catholic. The conflict continued to the 16th century, where the rebellion took place and saw efforts to assimilate the Irish by replacing them with the British, changing who the Irish actually were, sending Brits to the island to colonize it, and had success in the north, which is now known as Ulster, or Northern Ireland, that belongs to the UK. Then came the English Civil War and the Glorious Rebellion, where the Catholic Irish teamed up with the losing side this time, and had penal laws placed on them by the English Parliament, followed by the Great French War, where the French tried to provoke Protestant rebellion for Irish independence, causing the British government to claim Ireland as part of the kingdom again and bring it under its control by force. The Catholics made to live on and off the poorer land. Then we had the Irish potato famine in 1845, with 1 million deaths largely exacerbated by the British mismanagement, willful or not, leading to the Irish demanding an Irish Parliament for home rule, a government of Ireland within the UK. And the bill passed in 1912 under much scrutiny of the Ulster Loyalists in Northern Ireland. But all of this was put on hold for World War I, except for the Easter Uprising in 1916 against the UK, but that failed. The insurrectionists that were caught were killed via firing squads and became martyrs, celebrated and painted on walls, leading to 73 members of the Irish Republican Party, called Sinn Féin, you may know that name, being elected to the UK Parliament in 1918, but they refused to attend the Parliament in London, instead wanting to form an Irish Parliament in Dublin in 1920. This sparking the War of Independence, where a Republican army was formed to fight for that independence. And these tensions led all the way up to the Anglo-Irish Treaty in 1921, which split Ireland into North and South, Catholic and Protestant. Most people were unhappy with the situation on both sides, sparking conflict between the North and the South, and even between those living within each region. And then, over decades, the segregation just became normalized, in hiring for jobs and education and housing, with each side rarely mixing. And after 40 years of tensions and fighting in 1960, Northern Ireland voted for the Civil Rights Movement, highlighting inequalities between the regions. Protests led to riots and tensions rose throughout the 1960s, climaxing in 1969, whereupon a Protestant parade wanted to move through a Catholic area, Londonderry, which led to street battles. The Battle of Bogside, with hundreds of police and civilians and freedom fighters from both sides being injured and caught in the crossfire. On the third day of writing, the Northern Irish Prime Minister requested British troops to relieve officers, to be a neutral force to bring peace to the area. But soon, the Nationalists and the Loyalists began clashing again, and the army was not able to maintain order. And this led to the IRA splitting into two factions, the newer Marxist IRA versus the traditionalists, who became the Provincial IRA, leading to the Battle of St. Matthews, where the IRA beat back Loyalist forces, a huge propaganda win for the Unionists. The UK Army looked to disarm violence by entering Falls Road and that area, a nationalist stronghold, which led to the death of 4 civilians and mass rioting and violence to break out all over again. In 1971, Operation Demetrius, sounds Greek, began, which sought to intern paramilitary members, but also had a nationalist slant, leading to violence and reported torture, with many being imprisoned without trial. 2 IRA members were killed, then 2 soldiers, UK, were killed, and many civilians, over 20, caught in the crossfire. In January 1972, the army and the police were deployed to oversee an anti-internment march in Derry, where tensions were high. But the British paramilitary officers present were despised for their role in killing 11 people during Operation Demetrius. People threw rocks at the forces, who then opened fire on the crowds, devolving the whole situation into blood and chaos. 28 people were shot, 14 died, leading to a real hatred of the UK and its army, a historic day known as Bloody Sunday around the world. The civil rights movement disappeared, and so did moderation, and many people flocked to the IRA. 1972 had some of the bloodiest conflicts and the worst violence the British Army had seen so far. The IRA orchestrated 22 car bombings around Belfast, killing 9 people, soldiers, police, civilians. The army made 58 arrests, some being correct, some being unjustified, but easy, and leading to the death of 1 IRA militant. Loyalist paramilitary forces set up checkpoints to watch their streets or look for IRA spies, only leading to more violence. No-go areas were set up, but were disbanded by British forces as quickly as possible, with one of the worst incidents being in 1973, an IRA bombing of London, killing 1 person and injuring hundreds. In 1974, the Sunningdale Agreement was put forth, permitting an Irish government advisory role in Northern Ireland, the Northern Irish Parliament to be disbanded, and the House shared between the Nationalists and the Loyalists equally. The Loyalists disapproved of this, saying that the British were giving in to IRA violence, leading to back and forth violence between the two regions for decades to come. Hunger strikes became prevalent in the late 70s and 80s, where Irish POW status was to be taken away and those inside prison were to be treated as regular prisoners, leading to tensions between the Irish and Margaret Thatcher, the Prime Minister of England, who refused to bow to their demands. She saw them as criminals and wouldn't compromise, leading to 10 dead from a hunger strike. As retaliation, the IRA bombed the Grand Hotel in Brighton in 1984, narrowly missing the Prime Minister, but killing other people in the building, leading to the Anglo-Irish Agreement in 1985, promoting cooperation between the two regions, but equally hated by both. There were bombings back and forth with attacks from the IRA and also the British Army. 25 years of retaliation and violence, only broken by a historic ceasefire in 1994. But in 1996, the IRA began having doubts and breaks the ceasefire with bombings on the Canary Wharf at London. This effectively helped Tony Blair win the election, and with a new government, led to new talks between the two hostile forces. Though this was disrupted by a loyalist Orange Order parade that wanted to move through a nationalist area, the British government allowed it, causing the worst rioting seen since the riots over the hunger strikes in the 80s. But unlike so many times before, negotiations held, being called the Good Friday Agreement in 1998, with Northern Irish government wanting to focus on power sharing. The RUC effectively became the police and was watched by an independent commission for bias. One of the main points of the whole treaty was that if Ireland ever wanted to reunify, Britain would stand out of its way. Weaponry was decommissioned, prisoners released, and over 30 years of fighting came to a halt, with 3,500 deaths spanning the bloody history. And then Brexit happened, where it seems Ireland has gone from arguing about religion and British rule to arguing about Brexit, politics, and the EU ruling over them, still in religious tribes. The Loyalists recently demonstrated outside the Irish government offices in Belfast, the Loyalists being angry at post-Brexit trade arrangements, creating barriers and bureaucracy on trade between Northern Ireland and the UK, fueling tensions. 88 officers have been injured earlier in the month, and a week of clashes at a place ironically called the Peace Wall on Springfield Road. Hundreds of rioters were met by police armed with riot gear, canine protection, and water cannons, with some of the rioters being as young as 13 years old. So these demonstrations and violent clashes were fueled by a decision not to prosecute 24 Sinn Féin members for COVID breaches after they attended an en masse Republican funeral. Another reason was that some loyalists held concerns that they were missing out on the gains of a peace process in relation to jobs or investment or housing, with one of the biggest issues being the Irish Sea Border Crisis, or Article 16, which is the term of Brexit, stating that if issues of trade between the UK and Northern Ireland become too complicated, Article 16 can be invoked to ease the bureaucracy and complications to help trade continue, with mounting evidence suggesting that the Northern Irish are increasingly not being able to buy certain UK products, or even arrange shipments from companies as ginormous as Amazon. Compounded by the fact that the EU is so angry at the UK, it's doing everything in its power to try and make life as difficult as possible, because of a democratic vote. Now, with Brexit on the way, Italy thinking about it, Greece starting to scratch its head, and Poland putting its toes in the water. These countries effectively swing a fire poker around a room and yelling, "You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts!" Ha. Right, what's going on around the world? Let's have a look. So Brian Stelter was caught in the bathroom by Project Veritas, where he was confronted about the propaganda and fear his network sells to the public, whilst he was holding a little purse and wearing a jumper saying journalism matters now more than ever, and saying, "I feel really bad for you. I feel bad for you," to a journalist who is inquiring on one of the biggest scoops of the year so far. And it seems that Brian Stelter can't even recognize actual news when it comes face to face with him in the bathroom. Democrats want to pack the Supreme Court, bringing the number up to 13, thinking only in the short time as they will get their way for now, but not thinking in the long term when the Republicans may get back in down the line, huh? Because what do you think is going to happen? You've effectively started a grey arms race of loyal judges being appointed to the court by diluting their power. Like when you put too much water in orange squash. Yeah. So a group of parents who have got fed up with the racist critical race theory being taught to their children at school have stood up, finally. Oh my goodness. Demanding that this lunacy stop being pushed on their children. And parents around the country have applauded the brave act while watching the video in the dark room with the doors closed and not telling anyone what they saw, hoping the crazies don't come for them next. Because they're coming. They are coming. So Harry, the Marmalade Prince, has vowed to leave the UK after a row about the cow, Meghan Markle, with his father Charles over the widely criticised interview with Oprah, where Harry's balls were safely tucked in a safe space of Meghan's purse, and the most privileged people in the world lectured us mere plebs beneath them about their troubles and oppression while swanning through the world's palaces. Making normal people fed up with old Gingy Minge, and Meghan's lost her sparkle, making William seem ever more impossibly enticing, day by day. China has upped its war on most people by now including Christians into their atrocities. Because we do not discriminate, okay? We take on everyone. We hurt everybody, no worries. With Uyghurs still in concentration camps, Hong Kong citizens being imprisoned and now brainwashed, organ harvesting, social credit score systems that destroy lives with dissidents or political threats being living in fear or just being eliminated. But seldom the mainstream media covers any of this because they and Disney and the NBA are making more money than sense out of it. And LeBron James is the perfect poster boy for Winnie the Pig and his mob. So this happened in South Africa, and all I can say is now, Richard Dawkins has been stripped of his Humanist of the Year award when in 2015 he asked the question, if trans people actually are the sex that they identify with, then why was Rachel Dolezal vilified for identifying as a black person? See, he didn't quite put it in those words, sadly, but that was his general gist, ending with the phrase discuss, implying a question. But this led to his award being taken away, him being cancelled all over again, and every one of the foes being thrown at him. With them all forgetting you're talking to a literal fucking evolutionary biologist, not a queer study professor. And also, when you think about it, the question raises an interesting point. So Keir Starmer, a UK Labour politician with the name of a Nazi lieutenant, was thrown out of a pub for his support of the extreme lockdown measures that destroyed many bars and small businesses by deeming them unnecessary. The pub owner, Rod Humphreys, has been hailed as a hero and has definitely increased his clientele for standing up for his morals. So, cheers to you, Rod. And why don't we end on something nice for once, huh? Just for once. So NASA has released video footage of a helicopter flying on Mars 33.9 million miles away, and then sending it all the way back and not blowing up instantly, as most of these things always seem to do. But look at that, huh? Wow. Isn't that incredible? Well, I mean, it's better than riots. Well, that's the third episode. Thank you very much for sticking around. I hope you enjoyed everything we discussed today. But please, like, share, comment, and subscribe, because it really helps, especially since they're gonna be crushing me under it. Ugh. Anyway, see you next time. We can see what we can see.